I'd like to call the work session to order for October 23rd, 2023. Will the city clerk please read roll call?
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. We have 3 items for discussion tonight. Remind council that staff will pause and immediately answer any questions. We'll now receive a presentation regarding a real estate market review. That'll be from ASU, and go ahead and introduce.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Wendy Bridges, the Economic Development Director for the City of Goodyear. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce a speaker who, as the Mayor said, is going to give you a presentation on the real estate market and overview of the current economic conditions. And this presentation is brought to you at the request of one of our council members. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to Mark Stapp. He is a Fred E. Taylor Professor at the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm pleased to be here. A couple of you saw me on a very, very different kind of day in March, a nasty day, talking about the housing market, and I think that precipitated a request to have me come talk to the full council. I do this often. I've done this across the country for councils in helping them, and I am familiar with what all of you go through. Why so many apartments? Why so many build-to-rents? Why is housing unaffordable? Why do we have so much warehouse space? Why can't developers just give us Kierland Commons, please? That's all we want.
We are retitling warehouse space to employment center, so just to let you know.
Well, thank you for that, Mayor.
Right.
Semantics, it does make a difference.
Yes.
So a couple of things. You see what you see as council members and as a city from developers for reasons. And what I wanted to try and do is give a framework or a foundation for maybe why you're seeing what you're seeing and why it is difficult sometimes for you to realize the visions that you have as council members. I start with what I put up here on the screen, and I'll read it. Real estate's a service to society. It is not just a financial instrument. It exists at this interesting place, is the nexus between business and society. And you sit right at that nexus. And that's one of the things that makes your job so difficult sometimes. It provides a service to what I call actionable demand. We want lots of things. We hope for lots of things. We can't always get them. And the inability to get it is that inactionable demand. So it requires this, the business requires lots of capital. So financing both debt and equity and private property rights are 3 really big components to this market condition. And also realizing that Goodyear, like every city or town in the metropolitan area, is not alone. It's part of a region. And the things that we talk about are things that affect the entire region. They happen to affect you in specific ways because of where you are located in that region, because of resources you may have that may be unique, because of characteristics that you have that make it attractive or unattractive, depending on the demand. So with that in mind, here's basic story of the market today. We're familiar with what happened with housing prices. So this is from the Federal Reserve. You see to the far right with that dashed line around it, that was 2020 until very recently, the spike in median house prices. We're all familiar with it. We know what happened. A lot of people said, well, it's because it was cheap money. It was nothing but cheap money. They gave us cheap money, really. And that's what happened. When you actually look at the Fed rate, you realize that it wasn't just cheap money that was doing this. It was a number of other factors that were causing this rapid home price increase to occur. And I'm going to point to a couple statistics here. February of 2020, just before the pandemic, median house price in Metro Phoenix was $295,000. The months of inventory of existing homes was 2.14, which was very low. A healthy market needs about 6 months of housing inventory in order for it to be fluid. And that fluidity is one of the things that helps keep prices down. It also is a thing in a growing market like we have and like you have as a community where you have to have it in order to have people who are filling the jobs that the employment you're attracting is creating to live. If you don't have it, they get no place to live, you got a problem. So we need a strong inventory. June 2022, 17 months later, was the peak, with $475,000 was the median price of a home, 61% increase in 17 months. And the month's inventory was at 2.33, so it was slightly higher. I circle here, the lowest inventory was March, just before this peak, where we had 0.89 months of inventory. That's like nothing. That's really almost nothing available. So one of the things that happened to us is we had not enough inventory. And I'll get into a couple reasons why and a couple of other factors here. But the month supply, so I just looked at this for September, and it's up just a tiny, tiny bit, but even still 2.39. So we haven't had really much change in existing home inventory. And when you look at total inventory, although total inventory is up slightly from a year ago, it's really not significant enough to make a change in house prices. So what I thought was going to happen is I took that median price chart and I laid a trend line across it. And I said, okay, I think what's probably going to happen here is we had this spike because of the pandemic and there was a number of other factors in here. We're probably going to fall back down to the trend line. And so I plot the trend line. And then I said, okay, let's look at it from the standpoint of both long-term trend and more immediate trend. So 2011, right after the recession ended, all the way back to 1995, what were the trend lines? And trying to figure out where it might fall back to what trend. What I was surprised to find, I was wrong. And what has begun to happen again is that median prices started to increase. Now, it fell for several months, as you can see in this chart here. So this is average and median sales price of existing homes. And you can see where it started to fall and then it's come back up again. And we're almost about where we were. And when I looked at median price for September, it's starting to increase above where we were. Couple things to think about. Here's average earnings to home price index. And this takes us all the way back to 2009. And that red line on the bottom is average earnings. And that blue line is the median price of a home in Metro Phoenix. And you see how we've been diverging so significantly from wages with home prices. That causes an affordability issue for us. And that affordability issue begins to affect a number of things, including home building. New home sales by price in the Metro Phoenix area, you see that there's only 20% of the homes that are below $500,000. And only 23% of those homes are below the median price of a home in Metro Phoenix. That means that Phoenix metro area, only about 18.3% of the population can afford a median price home. When we look at existing inventories below median sales price, this was Maricopa Pinal total listings. The listings at or below median price was 38%. Listings below 350, there was only 2,400, and below 300,000 was only 1,400 in all of Metro Phoenix. So this chart shows you, this is the US supply versus price, but the chart here looks very much like it does for Metro Phoenix. And so you see price change, you see inventories, and they correlate to each other. Everybody knows that basic supply and demand. Well, why is that? Well, we came out of the recession and we underbuilt in this marketplace for almost 11 years. And that set up the conditions we have now. And a lot of what is happening is the result of what transpired during the Great Recession. And what happened with the pandemic just set in motion some things that accelerated so much quicker than the market could absorb. Single family and multi-family building permits. So you look at this chart here, and this is fairly recent. This was through the end of August. And you see that year-over-year change in total, single-family permits is down 27%. And multifamily, although up slightly, 4.3%, overall, we're below where we were last year with building permits. So we're not helping the market. We're not adding the supply, which when you look at the correlation between supply and demand, when we started to add more supply, we started to see a moderation in price. And so this is not helping. It's not helping because we can't build them. Right, so capital markets, I'll get to that in a second. New and existing home sales. When you begin looking at trying to add inventory now, not because of the fact that we've got people moving out of their existing homes, but because we have home builders building more homes to add to the market, you see that we are going to struggle to keep up with the overall market demand we have in metropolitan Phoenix. Why? Because we're one of the top job markets in the country. So lots of demand, lots of people want to be here. Employers want to be here for a lot of reasons that you all know, but we can't add the supply fast enough. The other thing, and this I think bodes well for the city of Goodyear, is we do have a significantly shifting development pattern in metropolitan Phoenix. You know, it was the 1980s, the 1970s, 1980s, 90s, beginning of the 2000s, there was a big push where most of the, like 65% of the new homes development was in the East Valley. And that has shifted. It shifted significantly. And you see on this chart here, single-family permits by region. And you see how the East Valley has dropped off. Pinal County has dropped off. The West Valley had picked up substantially. So there's a shift in the development patterns. When you look at where growth is going to be going, this map shows you with that magenta color where developable land is available in the metropolitan Phoenix area. In the West Valley is going to garner 52% of that growth. So it's coming your way, good or bad. It is going to change the dynamics of the entire metropolitan Phoenix area. We're familiar with what's going on with water, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Let's look at multifamily for a moment. Average asking rent per unit and vacancy rates. So quarter 1, 2022, quarter 4, 2022, quarter 1, 2023, you see where we started to moderate the price. And the reason for that is because we added so many more multifamily units to the market in that time period between 2018 and 2022. So we had an acceleration in development of multifamily units, and that started to dampen down rents. This shows new construction versus absorption. And you see in 2022, new construction far exceeded absorption. Well, capital markets have not helped us because it's slowed all of that down again. When you look at multifamily permits in the metro area, 1999 to 2018, we averaged about 6,000 permits per year in the metro area. Between 2019 and 2022, that jumped to 14,000, almost 600. So we had this big push to add more units. That was good. That's exactly what we needed to have happen. That frustrates sometimes cities because there's a big pushback against multifamily, against increasing density. And it's increasing density and it's having those units that's important. The question is, why can't we have more homes? Why can't we have more single family? Back to the affordability issue. That's one of the reasons why. Other parts of this market are doing extremely well. Why so many warehouses? Just go look at the Inland Empire, right? They have about a 1%, 2% vacancy, and their rates, rental rates are 4 times what they are here, 5 times. So we are a better alternative than some of the California markets. And we're right at the edge of where a truck can take their load off the docks and be on the road and not have to stop and sleep. So we're also in a place where we can distribute goods north, south, east, and west from here. So it's a very strong industrial market. We've also increased the amount of manufacturing and advanced manufacturing in the marketplace, and the semiconductor industry helping substantially, and I think that's going to continue now that it's a national defense issue, it's a security issue. All of the push behind increasing the amount of semiconductor development in the United States is going to inure to our benefit. And again, it's just going to increase pressure on the need for housing to house all of these workers. Past 2 years, demand outpaced construction, led to historically low vacancy rates. This will shift in 2023. There's a lot of inventory coming on the market. It's probably going to stabilize the market, but it's going to remain historically high occupancy rates for the industrial market, just like it has for the multifamily market. Tremendous amount. 2022 record net absorption of 27 million square feet. There was 4 million square feet in the first quarter of 2023 alone. Just tremendous amount. And the reason for that is because of our growth. Economic expansion has been tremendous. This shows how you're going to see this begin to moderate, space demand versus deliveries. Office. Here's the good news. We're not Chicago. We're not San Francisco. We're not New York. The office market does have a problem. We've never been an office market. It really doesn't have the effect on our marketplace that it does in other marketplaces. But, it does have a spillover effect because the capital markets view this and it puts constraint on new investments in a lot of different areas. The question that hangs out there right now, and I'm a NAIOP national fellow, and I'm on ICSE's North American Research Board. And I was at meetings in DC and Atlanta over the last couple of weeks for both organizations, and probably 75% of the conversation had to do with this, the office market and back to the office and what's going to happen with interest rates. The only two things the groups are talking about, really. And we don't know. This is an interesting chart. It came from a survey of those, 60% of those surveyed preferred hybrid, 33% preferred remote. There was a 53% decline in the preference for on-site work for those in offices that can work remotely. So this is a persistent problem, and employers haven't figured it out yet. But what it does have is a tremendous effect on our vacancy rates. New construction, retail has been fantastic for the last 7 or 8 years. And when you look at what's happened with retail over the last 7 years or so, I think you're going to see the same thing happening with office. It's going to take that long to sort out the office market. But retail is in very good shape because it's following rooftops. And as you see by this, we didn't add that much. We stopped building a lot of retail. And by not building a lot of retail, the housing demand caught up with it. And that's helped vacancy rates. It's helped push up asking rates for rents for both of them. One of the things that has happened is the interest rates have gone up so substantially, so quickly, and that has an effect on the capital markets. And what it does is it causes cap rates, and cap rates are capitalization rates, and that's one of the methods you use for valuing property. And the higher the cap rate goes, the lower the value of property goes. And as this has gone up because of interest rates, we've seen valuation of all commercial sectors decrease. And when they decrease, it makes it harder to get new projects financed. The other issue that this relates to is the exposure that banks have. And the majority of commercial loans reside within community banks, not the large national banks. And that's one of the big concerns. Why do you care about that? You care about it is because this business requires a lot of capital. And that capital is going to come from equity or debt sources. And when equity is pricing things much higher, cap rates, and debt becomes unavailable because it's under a lot of constraint, it's much more difficult to underwrite new projects. And that's exactly what's happening in the market now. So as much as we would like things to happen, it's more difficult and more difficult and more difficult to get them financed. This is an example that CMBS is collateralized mortgage-backed securities. It's one of the primary ways that commercial space is financed. And when you look at this, you see how much the number of new loans in the CMBS market has dropped off so substantially in the last year. So it's almost nanoscent at this point. CMBS origination volumes, it hasn't been this low since 2009. And that tells you why it's hard to get some of these projects financed. So rate hikes, fears of recession, makes adding new space to the market challenging. Rate hikes also have led to decline of property values. Investors and lenders are being more cautious. It's difficult to assess risk, which could be very problematic if rates continue to increase, or there's a concern that they may continue to increase. Industrial is going to continue to do extremely well. Commercial lending, we're just not sure what's going to happen with it. I think you're going to find a lot of non-bank lenders stepping into the market to try and solve problems. My basic forecast here is COVID impacts continue to affect the market. Employment growth continues to drive population. Industrial development is very strong. Still hard to add housing. Home prices will continue to rise. Home building becomes very difficult because of the cost of materials, labor, schedules, and the fact that people can't get loans like they would. Retail is going to follow the rooftops. Multifamily underwriting slows down. It's just going to make it worse for rents. And like I said, we're not Chicago. So just as supply is increasing, softening prices, credit slows, new growth makes things worse. Affordability and homelessness, big problem in our marketplace. There's a conflict with growth pattern in water, and capital markets slow all underwriting regardless of the product type. So that's my thumbnail market overview, as close to 15 minutes as I could get. How'd I do? Yeah, that's my brief update. It's hard to do this and be brief.
I have a question. This might be stupid, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What does a war, not knowing where we're going with this, and everybody keeps saying it's going to be longer and shorter, what does that have to do with this? Can that make this worse? Another war, I should say.
Yeah, so the answer to that is absolutely yes, for a couple of reasons. One is capital markets don't like uncertainty. They prefer certainty. This is an uncertain condition. It takes resources and redeploys them into other places. It requires the federal government to spend more money, and that increases deficit. That also puts upward pressure on Fed rates sometimes. So I would say it's not a stupid question. I think that it's a great uncertainty because we don't know what happens to the global markets.
So it kind of depends on how long we're in this war, which
Depends.
we don't have any idea.
No, we have no idea.
No.
And if we had an idea, there wouldn't be uncertainty.
Right.
And because we don't know, and we don't know whether this escalates, de-escalates, how it expands, you've got all of this great uncertainty. And like I said, capital markets, investment markets do not like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This was very, very informative. When I was going through it this weekend and stuff, I found it very interesting, especially the 18% affordability, and most of our major hubs in the state of Arizona are not affordable. So that was a concern for a whole nother generation of people, like my kids that'll be graduating. There's not going to be homes that they're going to be able to afford. So it's a big concern. So I would like to see if we could put, if it's okay, is this something we can put on our website, easy access, so our citizens can see this? Because this is great material to educate people.
As far as I'm concerned, it's yours.
Oh, thank you. And then I have two questions. You hear a lot about a lot of the prices are being forced up with not owner occupied, while investors are buying like lots of houses and Airbnb them or renting them. And do you consider this a bubble, or is it just going to stay elevated?
I think it's going to stay elevated. And the reason for that are the things that we talked about. We have this other thing that economists call the lock-in effect. And you've got 61%, 62% of all mortgages are below 4%. 80-some% of all mortgages right now, it's like 82 or 83% of mortgages are below 5%. And so the more that mortgage interest rates rise, the greater that lock-in effect becomes, the harder it is for that existing inventory to turn over. And you increasingly get this this have and have not, right? So we're going to bifurcate the marketplace, and people have to have someplace to live. There's just no doubt about it. If you're going to have the economic expansion that we realize here, people have to live somewhere. And if you're not moving out of your house, if home builders can't build as fast for a variety of reasons, and people can't get mortgages, what do? You have to have the rental housing. And I think, I'm looking at the MAG data, there's about 26% of the housing stock in Metro Phoenix, which is either second homes or institutional-owned homes. So it's roughly a quarter of the market. And I don't know, I have to look at it, but I don't know what percentage of that is second homes. But we have a very dynamic housing market because we have retirement housing, we have vacation housing, we have second homes, we have primary homes. It's a more complex market than it was even 20 years ago.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. I feel like we just got a crash college course on finance, and it's very interesting, and certainly having your narrative to go with the statistics was very helpful. And it's also helpful for us to get a 360 worldview of this, of the situation, because yes, we do hear a lot about multifamily and thing, and I think you put it very succinctly. People have to have a place to live. And I mean, it just is that simple. I did have a question about investors buying up homes, which Sherry asked. Are we still seeing a large in-migration from other states to Arizona, and do you expect that to continue?
I think as long as our employment growth continues, right? As long as Wendy's doing her job over here, the answer is going to be yes. Because the population is going to seek the job opportunities. I mean, population is the result of economic expansion. And we're going to continue to see that growth occurring. We're in a very good place for a variety of reasons. Now, we have our resiliency issues. We're all familiar with the conversation around water, et cetera. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten from Wall Street Journal and New York Times and places like that. No, we're not running out of water, but it is a critical resource, and it's something that we have to worry about. And so long as there isn't the war, as long as there isn't that black swan event, as economists call it, and we continue to be who we are, we're going to see that pressure to house these employees. And for the reasons I mentioned, it's not easy to do. Let me digress for 1 second. Phoenix is an adolescent metropolitan area. When you look at our peer cities, we are much, much, much younger than all those other cities. And so you, like your own city, you haven't realized your full form yet. In metropolitan Phoenix has not realized its full form, and as we mature, we're going to have to densify. There's just no two ways about it. In order for us to maintain a quality of life, we're going to have to densify, and that bothers some people. I realize that. But frankly, we're better off with a wide variety of housing choices than we are with just one type, single-family detached homes. And these are lifestyle issues. These are where you are in your life cycle issues. These are choice issues. These are opportunity issues for people. And so I think the entire metropolitan region is best served to have a broader array of housing types that are available for those people that are coming here.
I would say it's not your father's apartments anymore, for
No.
sure. It has definitely evolved and become like resort living. Well, my next question is part commentary and part question, but we have the state legislature who's looking at cities and housing and affordable, and they tend to look at us with a broad brush. In Goodyear, we felt like we've done certainly our fair share of developing areas for multifamily, integrating it into our city. Maybe, much more than some other cities who are really trying to resist it. But I'm curious if you have any interaction educating the legislator as about the current housing situations and things. They just want to legislate everything for us, and as if we're all doing or not doing the same thing. And And in Goodyear, I think we have tried to integrate a huge inventory and diversity of housing.
So I think the governor and her, when she first came out, having been elected, and talked about the affordability issue, I think that was very good. I know that firsthand that there's a desire to develop a state housing policy. We lack a regional housing policy. We need that. And that really should emanate from the top down. As I said, although every city is part of a bigger region, the region is part of the state. And these issues that we have here are magnified in some of the outlying rural areas in terms of affordability. It's much more difficult. So the simple answer is yes, conversations. It's hard to think about what, from the legislative perspective, can be done without having too heavy a hand in removing some of your right to govern your own place. The fear is that you do have, I'll call them economic free riders. You have cities and towns that go, nope, I don't care. They want the benefit of additional sales tax revenue that comes from, bed tax or from hospitality, but they don't want to employ the people they don't want to house the people that are employed in those places. I think everybody has to participate equally. Everybody has to participate in trying to solve the homelessness problem. It's real, and it affects all of us, whether we see it or not.
Great, thank you. And I have one last question, if I might. The Inland Empire, you said has a 1% vacancy rate, which is tremendous. I know that we have certain areas because of Luke Air Force Base, our airports and things that we knew that would be industrial, but I don't know that we knew it would be to the extent that it is, that the Inland Empire is migrating here. And what do you forecast for that? Is that do you see that will continue? I mean, it's all over the valley. It's just not the West Valley. I mean, it's everywhere you go.
So the opening of the South Mountain 202 loop, I think, also helped distribute some of that demand, which was a good thing. But I don't think you're going to see that waning. It's interesting because warehousing, I was just reading an article the other day, you're talking about warehousing spaces that are 80-foot clear heights because of the technology that's supporting racking systems. This is evolving, and some of it's very, very sophisticated. It's not just cheap throw up the walls kind of stuff. Laser leveled floors, high power demands, things of that nature. It is expensive. And one of the reasons it's here is because we have much more land available. Mm-hmm. It's much less expensive to develop here, and it's easier to develop here. But we're not as mature a market as the Inland Empire either. And I think you're wise to look out into the future to see what this might mean to you ultimately at build out.
Good question. Good comment. Thank you.
Anybody over here? Go ahead, Warren.
Just a comment, just piggybacking on Councilwoman Kano's topic. So it looks like, at least your forecast here, it looks like everything's going to slow down, but maybe we might have some benefits because we have a lot of population already that are underserved for retail. So you said retail might continue to be slow, but continue to come forward. So just commenting on that observation, which is a good thing, I think, for us, that we have created a lot of rooftops, and hopefully we can now continue to get some more retail.
I think you're right, and as the growth of the city continues and it matures, you have not been over retailed here.
No.
And so I think you're going to see that demand for retail space. And the question is what kind of retail and where. But I would agree with you. You're going to continue to see demand for it.
Yeah, and making sure that we have the space for that potential
Yes.
retail growth, wherever that might end up being, where that demand is as well. And then yeah, to Councilwoman Kano's point as well, I feel like Goodyear has done a really good job of creating a lot of density here. I know we have lots of units that could be built today, and I feel that maybe the East Valley or other cities haven't really been carrying their load of the demand that might need to be created out there for all these positions, but all these type of housing options. But I can think of a few cities that I think you're hinting at, where they want the resorts and they don't want the people that work there. So near the resorts or near the places that are tourism type centers.
Some cities are much more resistant to increasing density than others.
Yeah.
Is that?
And to her point as well, I mean, I think our legislators, they'd like to paint a broad brush with that as well. I think they like to punish all as opposed to the ones that are limiting that demand. So yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I know the Fed is a big driver of this. They're really trying to get the inflation rate down to at least 2%. So we'll see how we'll see what they do next year here. I'm really hoping that they start reducing interest rates, but it really depends what the numbers, what they see.
Yeah.
The numbers and everything, but
There's about 40-some% of the CPI is either rent or the equivalent of rent. And so as this has persisted, it has made it much more difficult to bring the CPI down.
Yeah.
If you strip out those two things, you look at the fact the Fed's been very successful in bringing it down, but rent and the rent equivalency factor in the CPI has kept it higher than I think it would be
yeah.
if we had a better market dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I know the consumer is the biggest 80% of the GDP for our market as well. So we people keep buying things, and that keeps also throwing off the Fed's numbers. And the employment rate is so low because we're doing such a good job bringing more businesses here, or just across the country. So yeah, so I'm hoping when the war, the uncertainty, and the markets don't really like that as well. But we'll see how. Hopefully the Feds will react and start reducing, and that'll hopefully free up some of that cash flow, like you're saying as well. But yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, it sounds like we're looking for a slowdown in housing coming up here, but I'm glad we're bringing more jobs, and hopefully we get some better jobs out here in the West Valley. So thank you.
Councilmember Stipp?
Thank you, Mayor. Am I close enough for this? Okay. Never had an issue. Thank you very much for the presentation. I attended a very informal presentation last week on the timeline issue that you've been talking about with regard to not only the interest rates, but what's happening with the market and the ability to invest, et cetera. And it, again, very informal. They mention timeline in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 year kind of, I'm going to say slowdown. I'm not going to say stoppage, but it certainly isn't going to be what we've seen. Does that track with about where you're estimating?
We would use the term softening.
Softening, thank
How's
you,
that?
yeah.
Right, it's a little kinder. Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's probably 18 months to 24 months of softening.
Yeah, okay. So, again, very informal, a bunch of people sitting around, but I think I was just trying to check that. The other thing that was mentioned in this discussion was they were using the term retail. Retail seems to be okay. Retail seems to be okay. And then this individual who works in the retail space happened to mention that what's driving retail are the quick serve restaurants. And that all gets lumped together, yeah. And I was all excited about, oh, retail, that's awesome. And then he mentioned QSRs. So what's your thought on what is the real retail, storefront versus QSR, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't think it's the sole reason that retail has done well. I think retail's done well because you stopped building lots of it, and you took some of it out of the marketplace that shouldn't have been there to begin with. But retail, like other segments, has got this hybridization that's going on. It's not a singular thing anymore. And so food and beverage is a big part of all retail offerings. But consumerism is strong, as Councilman Hampton pointed out, people continue to buy stuff. And that's surprising economists to some degree. But you also see the hybridization of the online world with the bricks and mortar world. And that has continued. And one of the reasons why we've got the demand for warehouse space is because this segment of the market has been very strong. So I wouldn't say it's driven solely by the QSR, but it's obviously an important part of it because it is part of the food and beverage component, which has been very strong for retail.
Okay. And you mentioned during a couple of your answers here that we have room for retail expansion here in the city.
I've not.
No, go right ahead.
Yeah,
I'm trying not to put words in your
No,
mouth.
no, as
so.
I was saying, I haven't studied your market specifically, but I think given where you are, what I know about it in your maturation is you probably are underserved in retail and could benefit from additional. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean let's build a new mall? Retail has done well because it has been very much in line with housing demand. And I think as long as you keep that in line with housing demand and focus on those lifestyle-related components, which includes grocery. Grocery stores follow rooftops. And then when you have the grocery store, you also have some of the other uses that tend to follow, and some of it is the QSR. You're going to see that kind of growth persist.
That's I'm going to say a great segue to my next question, which was really about what's going on in the food industry itself. We're with the merger of Kroger, Safeway, Albertsons, et cetera, we're down to 3 grocers. We're down to that, Kroger now, Walmart, and Whole Foods, for the most part.
Target would argue.
Well, Target might argue with that, yeah, but we're talking about traditional grocery
Yeah.
store kinds of traditional where everybody generally goes to grocery shop, but you're down to almost 3. So when we start talking about anchoring strip malls, which is traditionally done with a grocery store, are we, I don't want to say rethink, but we have experienced that those small, I'm going to say corners that we thought 20 years ago, or it's probably 25 years ago now, that might be a strip mall on every corner was kind of the theory, that we're looking at really very intentional grocery store here, which is followed by. Does that seem to be a natural?
I think it tempers that grocery war. I mean, listen, we had grocery stores. We had grocery wars. I mean, we're getting groceries on every corner. I think a lot of that has diminished. There's a good and a bad about the consolidation. But I think they would more likely segment themselves by market type than they are going to compete against each other. So they don't want to cannibalize their stores.
Right, okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Then the last question or series, I guess, is, we talk about industrial, and we've just recently put together a business park designation in our zoning ordinance, recognizing that it's not a traditional industrial user. And to the mayor's point, we're even try to change some of the terminology from industrial to, employment center. But when the big box goes up, it doesn't matter what you call it, it's getting a bad rap. Whether for us it's a data center or a warehouse or an advanced manufacturing, those 3 types of businesses all look the same. Any secrets to how maybe we?
It's, so my conversations at NAIOP, and for those of you who, that's an acronym, stands for National Association of Office and Industrial Properties. Like I said, I'm a national NAIOP fellow, and I was at the research meeting in DC. hybridization is right now the focus, as opposed to singular uses and singular zones. And I think considering the fact that you may want to be able to mix uses where historically it was employment zone, industrial uses, done, that there is considerably more hybridization, meaning multiple types of uses within one particular project or one particular area.
So that business park then actually works into
Yeah.
the future for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think recognizing the fact that they might include employment, but also housing and other kinds of services that may just make it a broader opportunity than a singular use.
Interesting. Thank you very much for the information. This is much more in-depth and broader than what I saw from you earlier in the year. And this is, I think, hopefully been very informative for everybody. I know the updated information was super informative for me. So I greatly appreciate, Wynette and the staff, and obviously Wendy, and you taking the time to come out here tonight at my request. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you. Well, we enjoyed your presentation, and I have to agree with you about the Inland Empire. I'm very familiar with it. I have some friends who have moved their supply chain business from there to Goodyear because, number one, the land was cheaper. Number two, they could build it from scratch up cheaper than they could remodel what they had in California. We don't have the laws and the rules and the regulations that California has, and it's hampering them. But a lot of the businesses that are there will be there forever because they have been there forever. They're not going to just lock up and move because they have all their employees. But ever since I've been on council, we've always said, or most of us on council have said, we want people to live in Goodyear and we want them to work in Goodyear. We don't want them going on I-10 and going to Chandler or Mesa or downtown Phoenix, but that's before we got our distribution centers, our manufacturing and all that. So we've worked very hard to be proactive on that. And we do understand that all the other cities are running out of land. We're very fortunate because we're only 13% built out. And while Phoenix has done a beautiful job of their downtown area building multifamily up on buildings they already have and made everything walkable, I think we could do the same thing eventually here. And I think it's just really important that when we have residents that say they do not want any more multi-housing, we have to remind them that not everybody is in the same financial position that they are and that they need a place to live, as you said. And the only option open for them is a rental property. And if we can just ensure that those that have the rental property keep the property up, and we stay on them so that it does not diminish the look of our city, I think we could be very successful. And people that come here love to be here. It takes them a little bit, but once they get used to it, if we could just get I-10 fixed now, that would be wonderful. But it's really interesting to see how the other cities are reacting to the multifamily housing. And while it appears to a lot of our residents that we have an abundance of it, we really don't. Because for 10 years we had none, and then all of a sudden they started springing up. But most of them had been approved years before. They could not get capital. They knew that they weren't going to be able to rent them if they built them. So it's all an economic thing that they have to look at all of this before they even break ground. So we're very fortunate to have what we have. I think we've done a good job except for one or two projects that I shall not mention that don't look very pretty. All the rest of them really look great and they really enhance our city. So thank you very much for coming, and it just solidified a lot of what we're doing, and we're just going to have to keep doing it. And we will get retail someday, and you're right, without the density, we're not going to get the retail.
Nope. You are right.
You good? Mm-hmm. Again, there's not a whole lot more to add except thank you for coming. I've got a couple things. I can appreciate the shortage of the housing. You know, my mortgage is at 3%. There's no way I'm going to buy something for an 8% mortgage. So I suspect that's part of the problem out there as well. Concerned about commercial rentals when they refinance some of their stuff. Are we going to see the bank taking some of these?
You know, Mayor, I think there was lessons learned during the Great Recession that lenders don't want these things back. I think some of this is really going to depend on a couple factors, one of which is the uncertainty of the softening period.
Okay.
You know, lenders aren't equipped to own and manage assets. And what are they going to do with them? And they realize that sometimes by foreclosing and taking them back, they create self-fulfilling prophecies. So I think that there's more an interest in trying to work out loans today than there would have been back at the beginning of the Great Recession. Some of it's going to happen, but I think that there's more likely you're going to see things being worked out. The proverbial kick the can down the road, let's get the market healthier again, and then we won't have the problem.
I hope that's the case. The other question is I've had an opportunity to share some ideas with our governor when it comes to affordable housing, and I don't have the answer. I know growing up, to get your first house and get your first mortgage, your equity, you buy it, you sell it, you get your equity, you buy it, you sell it. My concern right now is affordable owner-occupied housing. How do we get there? I know the mortgage rates, I know the cost of supplies, but my concern is if all you have as option is rent, and some of the rents around here are very, very expensive for those that actually want at some point to buy a house, and they don't have that opportunity, then they will never be able to build the wealth that a lot of us on this room have done over the years by buying a house, sitting on it a while, selling it, sitting on it a while, selling it, et cetera. So just any thoughts on how we might address that issue?
Yeah, it's difficult, obviously, because, you know, home builders are profit-seeking ventures, right? And, you know, there's a couple of organizations like Trellis that are it's a not-for-profit that's in the business of developing affordable for-sale housing. And, you know, there's capital that's available specifically for these kinds of uses. You have to be the kind of organization that knows how to access that capital, know how to manage that process. So, you know, one of the thoughts is through partnership, through strategic partnership with organizations. Land is obviously an important part of that. The ability to get access to developable land so you can build affordable single-family housing on it is important. And so cities, many times cities have access land, school districts, organizations, or, you know, parts of government. And so combining these things together in order to create some plausible, feasible solutions. Is it enough? I mean, are you able to build enough in volume that you really move the needle? It depends, but there are mechanisms, and I think one of those is looking for those strategic partnerships.
Well, I thank you for being here. It's very educational. I appreciate that. If we can get this thing so we can pull this up on our website for our residents, because if they can see all the concerns and where we're going and why we have what we have, I mean, all they got to do is go up 101 and they can see nothing but multifamily all up and down 101, you know, as you start to head north. Because you're right, people have to live somewhere. But, you know, this I think is very informative, and I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us about that.
My pleasure, Mayor, and I stand ready to come back and help however I possibly can.
Well, thank you very
you all.
much. All right, does anybody want to take a short break before we start, or just go into the next one? We okay? We okay? Huh? What do you think? 5 minutes? 5 minutes? 7 minutes? All right, we'll get a short break. 10 minutes, short break. Excuse me, our next presentation is regarding the Phoenix Goodyear Airport. I understand we have the Goodyear Phoenix Airport Manager here with us tonight. Deputy City Manager Justin Fair, will you please introduce everyone who's going to be participating? Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, Council, thank you for, let's make sure we have mic. Okay. Thank you for allowing us to come and give an update tonight. So my name again is Justin Fair, Deputy City Manager. I would like to introduce Brad Hagan. He is the airport manager for the Phoenix Goodyear Airport. And periodically they've come in the past and given updates on the airport in terms of operations and such. And so we've asked him to do similar tonight, give an update on the airport, but also due to recent concerns raised by some citizens, we've also expanded that to give an update on that. And so he's going to share what they've been doing and working on. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Hagan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. With me today in the room are Sarah Demery. Sarah is the Chief Operating Officer at Sky Harbor International Airport. Also Matt Heil. Matt is the Deputy Director of Aviation on Policy and Strategy at Sky Harbor. We also have Megan Johnson with City of Phoenix Government Affairs. And then to my left is Jordan Feld, is the Deputy Director of Planning and Environmental. So all of us are pleased to be with you today and appreciate the opportunity. So in our agenda today, this is a joint presentation. I'll give an overview on the update of the airport, and then Jordan will speak to aircraft noise, some of the recent concerns that residents have, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing going forward. So on the update, first I would start, we did an airport master plan in 2018. So that provides a roadmap for how we develop the airport. And one of the benefits of that is that it gives us an opportunity to have extensive outreach to stakeholders with the city and to residents. So during that process, we had three public workshops with the community that we had an invitation to come out to the airport. We walked through what we were doing with the master plan. We went over the forecast with them and talked about the projected growth in based aircraft and number of operations. So it gives us a good opportunity to do that. Also, I would mention we're going to do another airport master plan update in the next 2 or 3 years, and that will give us another chance to have a fresh look, to go into detail again, and to have a new forecast and to have new outreach. So look for that. It should be coming soon. Tied to the master plan, we've invested $40 million in airport infrastructure. Airports being capital intensive, there's always a lot of projects to do. And some of them on the key projects we've done, we've repaved our runway, our taxiway, our apron. We have new airfield signage, lighting, and markings. So Phoenix is doing a lot of investment in Goodyear Airport just to keep all the facilities modern and up to date. Also looking forward, we hope to have somewhere potentially around $100 million in private development over the next couple of years. We have a letter of intent signed for building of corporate hangars, and we also had a letter of intent signed from a developer who wants to build an air cargo facility. So hopefully we'll see that in the near future as well. Current business activity, there's 9 businesses at the airport, about 700 jobs. We have 7 commercial businesses, and the other 2 are City of Phoenix and the Air Traffic Control Tower. So about 700 jobs at the airport today. We have 3 core businesses. If you come out to the airport on any day, you'll see a lot of maintenance, repair and overhaul on large aircraft, up to a 777. We have a lot of business aircraft that fly in every day. And we also have flight training. We have 4 flight schools at Goodyear, roughly around 400 students today in progress. And all 3 of our business segments are expanding. Our economic impact, the report is somewhat dated. It's 2017, but we're currently working on a new economic impact report as I speak here today. So hopefully we'll have that soon and can update you with that. But the numbers for 2017, the annual economic impact was $121 million, and the payroll annually was $45 million. And so aside from the daily flight training, maintenance, and business aircraft, we do have a lot of events at Goodyear. One, for example, was our Super Bowl here earlier this year. We had about 145 business aircraft flying for the Super Bowl. A lot of notable VIPs, Elon Musk, Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, Rihanna, Jay-Z, Beyonce. So it's kind of a fun event. A lot of notable VIPs flew into Goodyear, Arizona for that. We also have NASCAR twice a year. We have about 60 corporate jets that fly in for that. All 40 teams, their owners, drivers, and crews all fly into Goodyear for that. We have Sky Kids. Every March, there's a nonprofit that does a great job with that, giving special needs kids an opportunity to fly the airplane that helps build their self-esteem, and it's really a really neat thing. We also do a lot of military support, both for Luke and all the military in general. We have a lot of aircraft that fly in either to get fuel to spend the night, or they conduct training while they're based at Goodyear. So we're very proud to do a lot of that military support. And one other event we have coming up is the NCAA Final Four. While we don't think that will be as big for us at Goodyear as the Super Bowl, we do expect to have quite a few corporate aircraft flying for that. So a lot going on, not only with the day-to-day activities, but there's a lot of special events at Goodyear as well. This is a graph of our operations. So every airplane that takes off or lands is one operation, every time it takes off or lands. So we went back as far as we have on records. That was 1990. So there's about 34 years there you can see. This year we do expect to be the busiest at Goodyear, about 220,000 takeoff and landings. But if you look back, you see an ebb and flow. So in 1990, we're a little over 200,000. 07, 08, 09, we were up about 190,000. So it is busy this year, but we've had other years that were close to that as busy. But it just gives you a feel of the activity at the airport in terms of operations. Before I turn over to Jordan, just one slide on United. I wanted to mention United because while we do have 4 flight schools, all of them are fantastic. The one that's biggest is United, and there's also been some residents who have had concern about United specifically. So we thought we'd talk briefly about that. United started in December of 21, so almost 2 years ago. Before that, for 50 years, our primary flight school was Lufthansa. And during COVID, that hit them hard, and they assigned their lease to United. So Lufthansa is still at the airport, but just a much smaller presence. So it's the first wholly owned flight school in the country, and they're working very hard to fill the shortage of pilots. You probably heard there's a significant shortage, and they're all doing what they can to develop pilots. So they're doing a lot of that Goodyear. There's an emphasis on diversity with United. They have a stated goal, 70% were women or people of color, so they're sort of on the leading edge with that as well. They fly primarily the Cirrus 20 aircraft. You can see there on the top left, state-of-the-art airplane. A lot of flight schools have older airplanes that are 50 years old, but in United's case, they're all new aircraft. And then they selected Goodyear. They did have some other options, but they saw what I think you all know here. It's a great place, and the weather's great here in Arizona as well. And one thing I wanted to mention, I mean, they've been a really good partner at the airport. They're investing millions into our facilities here into Goodyear. They have about 250 employees. Right now, I think there's about 370 students that are United. All are here either on airport or in the apartments here in Goodyear. And they've been a great partner for us. They have an open door. We meet with them every month. Whenever there's concerns from residents, we share it with them, and they do some background work on it, and they come forward with whatever they can do to find a reasonable solution. So I'll give you 2 examples. One, earlier this year, we had a resident in Estrella Mountain who had a concern with aircraft noise. So we shared that with the flight school, and they looked into it, and they made some changes to the way they flew. And we got an email back from this resident in Estrella Mountain who was really happy, very appreciative of the job the flight school had done. In fact, I'll read the email here. The first sentence was, "I wish to commend United Aviate Academy, Goodyear staff, and the Air Traffic Control Tower for continued efforts to be good neighbors to the surrounding community." Last sentence is, "I appreciate the continued efforts, as I am sure most of my neighbors do as well." So that was one example of a resident in Estrella Mountain we had worked with. And Jordan here in a minute will touch on the flight schools as well, finding a couple of voluntary initiatives they can do to help mitigate the noise with the residents who have recently expressed concern. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jordan.
Thanks, Brad. And Mayor and council members, again, appreciate the opportunity to give a bit of a technical update. I know how exciting those are at 6:15 on a Monday night, so I'll try to keep it brief. But just by way of kind of nerdy background, aviation law around being able to control noise and manage these issues really comes out of the 60s when we saw the mainstreaming of jet aircraft for commercial flight, and at the same time, of course, things like Clean Water Act, National Environmental Policy Act are all starting to ferment. And so by the mid-70s, there's formal policy around this from the federal government, and it essentially defines the specific roles here. FAA is 100% responsible for managing the airspace, the access to airports, aircraft certifications, and everything in between. The airport is responsible for maintaining the airport, maintaining the airfield, providing that opportunity for air navigation. And typically zoning authorities lead the way, like City of Goodyear, on making sure compatible land use patterns are established around the airport and things like that. And you can see there's different tools to that, including disclosures, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But really the key point here is, as it stands today, so many years later, this is the same set of rules that we're playing under. And so there's a lot of limits on the airport's ability to do anything with noise abatement, whether it's restricting aircraft access or moving flight paths or the pattern, things like that. There have been policies that implement the 1976 work, and you'll hear that sometimes referred to as Part 150 or noise compatibility planning. So that is a thing we can talk about in more detail. But as Brad alluded to, particularly in the situation we're seeing here, it's much more effective to try to work with the operators and look at voluntary measures than try to go through the more federal formal process, which you'll see here in a second. This map, which I apologize, I didn't bring enough binoculars for everybody, but is the traffic pattern airspace around Goodyear Airport is federally defined. And what you're seeing, those weird squiggly lines around the airport, are the noise contours, the regulatory noise contour being the 65 DNL. The red square there is the Palm Valley PAD, Planned Area Development. And so you can see the area in question where the majority of the noise complaints are coming from is actually well outside, miles outside of the 65 DNL contour. In fact, this map we actually made from the, not last master plan update, but the one before that, where we had forecasted 300,000 operations. And we felt like that's a more representative future number than the last master plan update, which is, Brad talked about, was probably a little bit closer to 200,000. So we wanted to make sure the public was very aware of potential noise issues surrounding the airport. So this is an effective map and kind of showing where the noise could be in the future. It's certainly much less than what's shown on this map today. But key to this is the state in the late 90s adopted law that made it a requirement for anyone purchasing a home to be made aware of this traffic pattern airspace map. And kudos to the City of Goodyear for taking it a step further. In your zoning ordinances, including the PAD for Palm Valley, you require that disclosure. So it's part of your process, this idea of managing the compatibility around the airport. Brad mentioned the last master plan update and the public outreach. Again, that's an opportunity where the airport works with the public on understanding what could happen in the future. And we'll be doing another one of those in the near future here. The master plan is nice, unlike a Part 150 process that has very tight limits on what you can do. The next master plan update, we will put more scope into looking at community noise issues and get in front of this issue now that we know that there's community concerns about it. Sky Harbor, City of Phoenix Aviation Department, in my opinion, does a really good job of helping community members understand noise issues and access flight tracks and see what planes are flying over their area. And so one of the tools we offer is an online flight tracking system. It's free. Anyone can go onto this link and look at the different flight paths in their area. You can submit noise complaints directly through the website. There's an app you can download for your phone, so it's very easy to submit noise complaints. And to put a fine point on it, since all this great technology has come about in the airspace and noise management business, it's not uncommon to see single households submitting hundreds of complaints, given, again, kind of the ease in technology as opposed to having to call or, by today's standards, even shooting an email is now seen as kind of a cumbersome process. So apps and websites are really the thing. The other takeaway from the map is the ridiculous number of lines all over the map, from Sky Harbor, Luke Air Force, Glendale, Goodyear Airport. So this is a very constricted airspace, and that, again, goes to the difficulty in trying to modify the location of flight paths from what they are today. So as Brad mentioned, we started receiving, let me talk quickly about what's in place today for noise abatement at the airport. So the master record for the airport, or what we call the 5010, it's the thing that all pilots consult before they fly into an airport. There's actually remarks in there about noise-sensitive communities, neighborhoods north of the airport. Brad meets regularly with all of the users at the airport and goes over the AOPA best practices for flying quiet. There's quite a bit of discussion around these issues, trying to be good neighbors. This is the community's airport, so Brad's been really good at facilitating those conversations with the operators. And so it's just important to note that even before we started receiving these complaints, this was a thing we wanted to manage and be proactive about. A little bit about the recent trends in complaints and households here. Again, back to the, you're maybe looking at these numbers and thinking only 3 or 4 households are submitting, in some cases, 1,800 noise complaints. It's actually not that odd. So it's not quite to this degree, but similar trends you would see at Sky Harbor. There's probably about, on any given month, 40 households, 50 households submitting 2,000 or so complaints. And Deer Valley, for a long time, was getting quite a few complaints. But it is important to note, again, the number of households versus the number of complaints. That's one of the telling statistics. This is actual flight tracks, so this is 1 month, this is August actually, of all flight tracks in and out of Goodyear. And then you can see the yellow houses indicating where we've been receiving noise complaints, one to the south of Stray Mountain, but the majority in to the north, the Palm Valley area. And then this is a blow up or zoom in of that map. And again, 2 households accounting for 99.5% of the complaints we're receiving. So we did meet with the complainants or the interested community members that are experiencing these noise issues. We relayed the idea that as long as safety standards and other things are met, the aircraft are generally trying to not fly north of I-10 when they're in the pattern and coming back to land. But if you look back at those flight track maps, you can see it certainly does happen though. And so that has been a big part of the conversation is what can we do to the degree, again, under safety rules, minimize the times planes are turning around north of 10. And to be honest, with Brad's leadership, the flight schools have been very receptive. And I think I just drove around the neighborhood for a couple hours before I came here today. And visibly, you could see most of them were lining up south of McDowell, if not 10. So I think, again, back to what I was mentioning earlier, that anytime you can work with the operators on a voluntary fix, it goes much smoother than trying to work with the federal government. I won't go into those details. Additionally, there were some concerns about low-flying aircraft. And again, occasionally, because they're in the final approach and landing, it's the pilot's discretion as to how far they're off the ground. The lowest I've seen through this area is around 800-900 feet. Generally, it's well above 1,000 feet. And again, with Brad's facilitating the discussion, They will not only make an effort to not cross I-10, but will make an effort to keep it above 1,000 feet AGL, above ground level. What other things can be done? I certainly, again, commend Goodyear from a compatibility and zoning authority standpoint. You've done quite a lot already. As I mentioned, Brad and his team do a lot at the airport, again, to remind stakeholders, users of the airport, of these noise issues. There are other things we can look at, a common technique just to give that pilot. One last reminder, but before their wheels up, is a sign on the airfield that says, remember, at this location, make this kind of turn, or don't go above this. So we can definitely do that. We do a little bit of a safety analysis. You don't want to run out there and put a 4x8 sign right on the runway without doing a little safety analysis on where it goes and what that should look like. But that's an easy fix. One of the things we do, in addition to hosting that website, we, unlike other airports in the state, publish a monthly noise report. So one of the things that we've talked internally about doing is starting to publish more maps about Goodyear and having that discussion get a little bit more attention than it does today, maybe in our monthly noise report. And then as a planner geek, the most fun thing I wanted to talk about today was this idea that in the last master plan update, we saw that beyond the 20-year planning horizon, there might be a need for a second runway. And so it's just talked about kind of qualitatively. We didn't do a lot of engineering behind the concept. But now, as we're starting to see the operations really start to grow, and we now have a good amount of noise complaints, in this master plan update that we'll be doing, we'll be seriously looking at moving up that second runway into the near term, the short term for planning, programming, environmental, and construction. And that should make a tremendous difference because it diffuses the flight track and, with the master plan update and the NEPA environmental work, there will be clear modeling in terms of noise reduction benefit from the second runway. And so I'm, very looking forward to starting to work on that, and I'm sure the community is excited to hear that. So I think in summary, Brad, did you want to lead us through this one?
Yeah, no problem. So we continue to have outreach, engage with residents as we get noise concerns. We always meet with them. We'll find out to learn as much as we can about their concerns. We'll continue that. We'll continue to collaborate with our tower flight school and other users that we've mentioned earlier. That'll be ongoing. It's not a one-time thing. We appreciate the partnership with Goodyear, not only on this noise issue, but every day we get calls from police and fire from Goodyear. We work with economic development, planning, zoning, the whole team, and they always do a great job. So big thank you to Goodyear for that. And the FAA also has different sections. So sometimes you hear somebody say FAA, but FAA is different, right? So there's an air traffic division, there's an airports district office, an ADO that helps airports and our development of airports. There's also a flight standards district office in Scottsdale, and they're the ones that deal with aircraft safety. So if a resident has any concern about an unsafe aircraft, what they think is unsafe, it isn't City of Goodyear, it's not City of Phoenix, it's the FAA, the FSDO office in Scottsdale. And we always give the concerned citizen that contact information because that's really the way to have it investigated. Let's see, and I think that is it for the presentation. So again, thank you, the whole team from Sky Harbor, from City of Phoenix, and Jordan, myself. We appreciate the opportunity and be happy to address any questions you may have.
Okay, you go ahead, Councilmember Gill.
There was a gentleman that came in 2 or 3 times, and I don't remember his name. Do you remember his name, Wynette? But I do remember that he came in 2 or 3 times, and we were telling him the same thing, that we needed to get a hold of you guys, and we wanted to get on this. Do you remember talking to some? You said you talked to some of the complainants. Do you remember talking? He was a pilot himself. And did that go okay? I mean, did he get his questions answered for the most part? Because that was the one I was concerned about, because he kept coming in.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Gillis, that's absolutely one of the 2 stakeholders that we've been working with, taking his concerns, bringing it right to the flight schools and the air traffic control staff to try to mitigate his exact concerns. So yes.
Because he was concerned about how low the
That's right.
flights were flying.
Right.
And so he's comfortable now with this, do you think, or are we going to see him again?
Mayor, councilperson, I think, I don't want to speak for him, but certainly I think he appreciates the steps that the flight schools have already agreed to take. I don't think it solves all of the issues. Anecdotally, the community members have suggested that we could either shift flight patterns or restrict flight patterns to certain times a day, or limit the number of aircraft that are in the pattern at any one time. These are all logical ways to reduce noise. Unfortunately, they're all illegal under current under FAA rules. So those are the types of measures we can't really pursue.
Right, and they may not be aware of that, and we have to do what we have to do within the legal.
That's right.
Okay, that's all I needed. I just wanted to be sure that they were addressed, because I am very, very happy with the flight school and everything else. Brad knows this. I like everything you're doing. I love the fact that you're going to up the time for the second runway. I think that's a great idea, and I think that will help solve some of this, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy about that. Thank you for addressing this.
Councilmember Loretano?
I want to thank you and your team for coming here today and giving us the update, first of all. I think that's very good. We have to remember the airport was here before most of any of us around was it World War II or World War I it came in at?
World War II.
World War II with the cotton. I mean, that's why this city is here, basically, is because of that airport. And my first house was very close to the airport on Magnolia in Estrella Vista. That's why my husband married me, because he could fly over and see me from Gilbert. See? And our house now, we're on the Twin Lakes pattern. And for those in the back that don't know, we've had a hangar at probably over 20 years and had a plane. We have a Cessna Twin there for about 20 years. So I asked him about the noise and everything to kind of get his thoughts about it and what's going on. And talking to him and looked at some of the issues that you guys have done. And I was very pleased at everything you've done to work. And when someone brings a concern, how you forthright work with them and try to solve it. I don't think you're going to solve everybody's issue ever all the time. I think the emails you have from Estrella is great, because our area where I live is a lot bluer than the area those people that were complaining from. Or we apparently have more traffic going over our house. I just don't pay attention to it. So I'm very happy with what you've done, and I'm glad you'll keep out. I think our flight school is definitely it's a jewel, and we need to make sure that is protected and that airport is protected, because so many communities don't have that type of airport with general aviation, or they're getting rid of general aviation and don't have that ability. It's only the high-end corporate. So I think that's a great community asset to have that can grow. The one concern I had about the presentation when I looked at like the heat map, because I asked for the times, I was like, are these coming over? When are these coming over? And you say it could be a normal behavior. I don't think that's a normal behavior. I don't know who sits there, because there were complaints. I asked for the times. There were complaints that were done like at 11 o'clock at night, and there are some that's like 6:03, 6:04, 6:05, 6:06. That just seems a little compulsive, a little obsessive to me. I don't know what's going on with whoever made that complaint, but that is an issue. And what happens when someone complains like that is that the people that have legitimate concerns that want to reach out and want to be heard get lost in all that clutter. That person from Australia who you actually had the opportunity to reach out to and solve the issue, people like that have legitimate issues, when someone is sitting there and I don't know what someone's doing, just like continuously on their phone over again, because we matched it up. He went on FlightAware for me, and we matched it up, and there weren't always our planes. Sometimes it was the same plane, looked like reported like 3 times. Sometimes it was a plane clearly coming from Luke. Sometimes it was a plane coming from Glendale. Sometimes just a plane over. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. Maybe that's something you guys can work on, that system, because my concern is that people with legitimate complaints who really do want to work towards a solution, a win-win situation, are going to get lost. So I do want to thank you and your team for that. It's very informative, and it's great to have the airport here. My only other question is, are we going to get with the new development any $100 hamburger restaurants on our airport anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It would be fun to have that, though, and have people flying from Pace and other places come into Goodyear for, I don't know if they all know. So really up in Pace, I think it's most famous that people will fly up to get a hamburger right at the airport. And so it's $100, because by the time you take the cost of the fuel to get up there and have a But it's a neat place and it's a neat thing, so.
Yeah, we'll talk to Wendy, our development director's here, so economic development, we'll hook you guys up. So thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Vice Mayor?
Well, thank you, Brad, for coming out. I also want to thank the aviation leadership team for coming out to making the commitment to show and be available. I was thinking about your visit last year. There was a big discussion about commercial passenger airlines, and I know that since that time I had a lot of questions that come up. Why can't, Southwest Airlines land here? And we were well prepared to answer those after the discussion last year. And I think this ongoing collaborative relationship certainly is very, very helpful. I'm also excited to learn that you are one of the busiest airports nationwide, and you're a huge regional asset to the Southwest Valley, and we definitely want to see you prosper and grow. Like some of the residents you've heard from, I do live in Palm Valley, and it certainly hasn't been the decibels that have been an issue. Because of where I live by McDowell and close to Bullard, I get traffic from McDowell, I get traffic from I-10, a lot of motor traffic. I think what has been a concern for me is just the endless loops. It's a drone, it's just a continuous drone. But I certainly appreciate how responsive you have been to the residents and how you're working with the schools to remedy that. And I just want to say that, again, that we're really proud of this partnership, and your success is our success as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation tonight. I do want to tell you that for years we worked with Joe Husbands, the previous manager, and loved him.
Yes.
We're so sad when he retired, but
Yes.
you've done a wonderful job taking the realms and trying to fill those big shoes. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. And on behalf of the folks that I volunteer with, thank you so much for your support of Sky Kids. That is so important to us here in Goodyear, and it's just so heartwarming when we're able to have the children come.
Yes.
Our pilots donate their
Yeah.
time and their airplanes to take these precious children up
Right.
who probably would never be on an airplane any other time in their life. So thank you so much for that. I have a question that I would like to know about, can your airplane traffic be limited where we not have any takeoff or landings at nighttime or on the weekends? How does that work?
Mayor, councilperson, excellent question. Unfortunately, there's only one airport in the entire country that has that type of restriction. It's Naples, and it predated a law that was passed in the late 80s that essentially made that impossible to do without going through what the FAA calls a Part 161 process, different than a Part 150 process. And since the Part 161 process has been essentially created by the FAA, they've never approved any proposed measures under that process, like a evening restriction or time of day restriction or things like that.
Well, how is it that Luke doesn't fly on the weekends? Is
It's
that
the-
just a local rule? Which is fine, because I'm a military wife, I understand that, but.
Yeah. Again, thank you for that question. It's Luke's prerogative, so they're voluntarily doing that. I used to be the airport director for Tucson Airport Authority that had F-16s, the Air National Guard wing there, and all of the noise abatement measures were voluntary. So afterburner restrictions, time of day
Yeah.
restrictions, it's coming from the DOD.
Davis Monthan, yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay. Now, my next question is anyone from United Aviate here tonight? No.
No.
Okay. Do they know we're inquiring and that we're having you come and that we're
they're-
trying to
they're-
deal with this as well?
Yes, Mayor and Councilwoman Campbell. They were aware, and they have extended invitations for any councilman, the mayor, anyone who would like, city manager, anyone would come out to give a tour, would give a briefing, would give an update. But they were unable to make it tonight.
Okay, I was going to say, because doing a tour and a briefing isn't the same as answering our questions and being in this type of a setting. And we have been there for their graduations, and
Yes.
so we've seen their the lay of the land, so to speak. And we're very happy that they're here. But honestly, we've never had these complaints with the German Air Force or with Lufthansa. And I've only lived here since '99, but I've only been on council since 2011. But I don't recall, I mean, I deal with my neighbors, and I won't tell you where I live, because everybody else knows, that complain about the airplanes flying over on our golf course. And then we all say, well, you signed the paper, and, you know, it's the sound of freedom, and blah, blah, blah. And you only hear them when they're taking off and coming home. And we know they take off at 7:30, anywhere from 7 to 7:30. They come back at 11, they go off at 2, 2:30, they come back, and then they go off at 8, 8:30 for the night flight, and they're back by 10, 10:30. So we know that process. But I don't think that the United Academy has that sort of process. They must fly these flights all day long. I'm assuming, now I don't know, and I'm assuming that they have so many airplanes, so many students go out, and those come back, and the next block of students go out, so that they're pretty much busy all day and into the night. Is that a safe assumption?
I think it is a safe assumption. They do a lot of flying. They have a lot of students. They have to have night hours. They have to have cross countries. There's a number of different factions. So
Sure.
it may ebb and flow depending on the class load and what they need.
Okay.
But they do fly quite a bit most of the day.
Do they fly with an instructor?
Most of the time with an instructor, but sometimes they're not. They have to go solo for certain flights after a certain number of hours, and they get checked off.
Do you think it's these solo folks that are coming below 1,000 feet possibly?
I don't know.
You probably
but,
can't speculate. It'd be hard to say, really.
Yeah,
Because I know the instructor wouldn't let them do it.
I'm not aware, other than what I can say is that they've been briefing everyone, students,
Good.
Instructors, everybody. So as Jordan mentioned, really the twofold, what they wanted to do to have the most immediate impact is when it's in their discretion to keep the pattern at I-10 or south.
Right.
Sometimes if the tower's open, they need to extend them for safety, but they're going to try, if they have the discretion to be I-10 or south. And then if they are extended north of I-10, to maintain 1,000 feet above the ground level until they get back to I-10 and then start their descent
Okay.
into the airport.
And of course, we know that this airport is an extension that Luke can use and
Yes.
possibly Sky Harbor if they need to do that. If we can land the presidential plane out here, we can pretty much take care of almost any aircraft, I
Yes.
would think. And so with the second runway, is that because we're going to increase the traffic or increase the schools? What's the rationale for doing a second runway? I know you're dying to tell us.
So as you point out, Goodyear Airport has a tremendous single runway in terms of width, and the pavement rating and all those things lead to exactly what you just described. But for things like flight training and smaller aircraft, you can certainly use a much smaller and narrower runway to accommodate the same activity without having to use the primary.
Okay, so if you do build a second runway, would that then change the pattern, the flight pattern?
Excellent question. It would split the pattern as it got closer to the airport, so you could end up with essentially two overhead approaches on either side. What you would generally see, though, is just a slight shift. It would be an outboard runway, so northwest of 321. And so you would see a slight shift or diffusing of the activity to the north and to the west relative to Palm Valley.
Okay, when is your estimation of starting construction and completion of this? And how is it going to affect the service you have today?
Great question again, thank you. We'll need to go through the master plan update. To the degree we can work with FAA on jump-starting the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act requirements, we will. But that all said, we're probably 5-6 years away from seeing the design and construction happening.
And then a couple of years to build it, I would suspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I would like us to stay as a general aviation airport. I do not want passenger service coming in and out of Goodyear. I don't think we can handle that sort of thing. I don't think we have enough land to do passenger terminals and parking And I can imagine there are some folks, though, however, they want an aircraft company to come in here and fly only to Mexico. And I know why they want to do that, but I don't see that it's logical for us to even have any kind of a passenger aircraft out of here unless it was an emergency landing that we had to have one of those airplanes, and they would certainly get them out as quickly as they possible. But there's no plans to change the airport, is it? Because the main one is Sky Harbor.
Yes.
Now, I know Glendale at nighttime turn their lights off. Does that mean you don't land at Glendale?
No, Councilmember, generally it's pilot-controlled lighting, so when a pilot flies into an airport, they can key the mic 3 times.
Because they don't have a control
five-
tower.
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
that's the difference, because a lot of times at nighttime when I'm going by and it's dark,
Yes,
I'm thinking, well, how does an airplane know where to park?
yes. Yeah, the
So-
pilot can activate the lighting.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for coming, and we used to fly into the Nut Tree at Vacaville every Sunday for breakfast for years. So I know a $100 hamburger would be just great. We could do it maybe for 50. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Hampton?
No, thank you again for the presentation and bringing your whole team. So I appreciate your communication with the user and at least making them aware, and hopefully they can mitigate some of the noise abatement type issues. So thank you for that. And then I had some other random questions too. The small planes, have we phased out all lead fuel for those small planes?
Not yet, but there's initiatives by the industry to do that. They're actively looking at it, and I don't, Jordan, you might be better. I think it's in the short term where they'll have that option.
Yeah, that's correct. And, even taking it a step further, electric aircraft is on the horizon there, so good things are coming in that category.
Okay.
I'm not flying one of those, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not getting on that plane.
No, I'm just curious. I watched like a,
Goodness.
am I not on? You're on her. Oh. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I watched a documentary on like lead, so I was curious what year when we were phasing that out, what that looked like, and the effects of that. But, and then, yeah, I'd like to utilize the airport as much as possible, whatever that looks like. So I know there was some talks, I think last time we talked about maybe having some specialty potential users fly in and out to relieve somewhat of, not people, but like food and things like that potentially coming, cold storage or other things
yeah.
like that potentially coming into that
Yes.
airport. So I'd like to obviously maximize it for whatever we can, especially utilize that area, the region, maybe as a relief to potentially Sky Harbor. So hopefully that is still a potential. I mean, obviously, yeah, whatever we can do to maximize that, I would like to do. So, but I appreciate it. I don't know if you have any updates on something like that, but bring all the good stuff. So we like that you're here in Goodyear, and I'd like to continue that relationship. So thank you.
I appreciate you coming in. It's going to be curious, like I say, the mayor of Phoenix had told me that maybe the electric airplanes are not too far in the near future, so that'll kind of solve your noise problem at that point, I'm hoping. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out, trying to resolve some of these issues. I appreciate our partnership. I appreciate bringing all the staff in to do this presentation, and I thank you for that. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, our last item to even is We Ride pilot results. Project Management Coordinator Christine McMurdy, would you please introduce yourself, which I just did, so that's not necessary for you. All right, what do we got here, Christine?
You're not going to be able to see it if I put it at my station, so I'm bringing you some more hardware.
Yes. Christine, that looks like the papa to the little tiny one that I got the other night. So, and again, I want to thank staff and Christine and everybody else that's been working on this. We got an award at the event for innovation for the We Ride, so it was recognized by Westmark. So I want to make sure everybody who's listening understands that we were recognized for that piece. So with that, go ahead. The floor
Thank
is
you,
yours.
Mayor and Council. Christine McMurdy, Project Management Coordinator. I'm here tonight to give you the results of our one-year We Ride pilot program. So at this time last year, we soft launched the service. And I'm going to update my slide a little bit because in less than 10 minutes, we will cross the 12,000 into 13,000 passengers served since September, which is awesome. And we're also really tracking a very high day today for reasons I have no idea. Where I believe my colleague in Avondale is texting me, and we were at 150 passengers about a half hour ago, so I'm sweating a little bit because I want to make sure that we finish the day solid. But what were we trying to accomplish when we did this? We had 3 surveys: the Transportation Master Plan, the Avondale Goodyear Transit Study, the Citizen Satisfaction Study, and then the Neighborhood and Human Services Master Plan. So in addition to population density, we have vulnerable populations that need mobility. And it's not just seniors and the disabled, but also school kids, teenagers, low-income households without cars, and then households that have only 1 car. And those 3 surveys that included public input told us we needed to get folks in the area to work, school, grocery stores, childcare, and healthcare. So how did we do? On your left side of the slide are the top 20 WeRide pickup locations, and on the right are the top 20 drop-off locations. I almost went with 10, but then if you look at 11 to 20, it really brings it home. And just a reminder that these are virtual stops. There is no sign at the location where the passenger is waiting, because the location appears on the WeRide app that our customers select when they book a trip. So while we're not 100% certain the purpose of the trip, these locations suggest that we have solid information from those studies, because we're averaging over 100 passengers a day on WeRide in the zone that we operate. And these most popular locations include groceries, medical, the high school, college, recreation, and jobs. Over on the Origin side, that first cross street is in historic Goodyear. And on at the bottom of that list, that last cross street is Bella Rosa at Canyon Trails. Amazon GYR1, which is high on both lists, is at Bullard between Harrison and Grant Street, also in the zone. And Grayson Place is our multifamily complex at McDowell and 159th Avenue. So I provided a survey update for you in April, and I used that as our starting point to measure our growth and key performance indicators up to last month. The contractual performance measures are solid, with just a slight dip in percentage of successful searches in September, but that's still within our contract goal. And that statistic just means that we're busier now than we were in April. On the ridership chart, I'll point out that starting August 21st, you see a spike that just keeps continuing, and that's because school started. Our transportation manager, Jake, advocated to me heavily over the summer to make Estrella Mountain Community College a direct trip instead of the way we had it, which was a transfer at the Park and Ride. He also attended the Desert Edge High School Meet the Teacher Night, and he had a line forming at the table before he even had the tablecloth down. So we're seeing many more trips to and from Desert Edge High School. Also in April, we talked about whether we need to serve other areas of the city. The reason the service is working so well in the current zone is the demographic information that our consultants gathered for those 3 original surveys was consistent with national statistics that support transit need. While these areas don't necessarily support all of those statistics, like median and per capita income, microtransit as a service has a broader application than traditional transit. Microtransit works well in low-density areas for riders who prefer not to walk due to uncomfortable weather, and it provides options for passengers that have limited mobility, which we see in Pebble Creek and also Cantamia. In the case of Estrella Mountain Ranch, the consultant that performed the Avondale Goodyear Transit Study specifically identified Estrella as a future expansion area. The lack of activity areas within that community speak to the need to bridge the gap between that location and the activity centers that we have in central Goodyear. So in late May, staff provided an update to the city manager's weekly memo letting you know that we were going to survey those 2 communities to learn more about their travel needs. And as you can see, we really didn't have a huge response, but we did learn a few things. First, I want to quickly acknowledge Jeremy Dyke and Jenna Goad for their help developing and transmitting these surveys. Neighborhood Services staff has been a huge partner during this pilot. To ensure we were fair to all, both surveys had identical questions, and we took the approach of asking questions about whether the characteristics of microtransit service would be desirable. There were 11 multiple choice questions that included their location, whether the person was a year-round resident, whether they were responding based on the needs of others in their household, how often they currently get to where they need to go, what key destinations were most important for them, and if they were reflected in the zone map that was provided in the survey, common times they need to travel and how much they would be willing to pay. Are they willing to wait for a pickup, and how long are they willing to wait? And we provided some options for them to choose. And are they willing to walk 2 to 4 blocks to meet the vehicle? And are they willing to share the trip with other passengers? In Estrella, the survey responses represent about 1% of the population, and in Pebble Creek, it came to about 0.75. So this was really very general. Nothing very specific screamed at us from the results, but it does give us an idea of wants. So I took our contractors on a trip to Estrella Mountain Ranch, and we went all the way to Cantamia and back midday on a weekday. They timed the trip from the ballpark to Safeway, going the speed limit at about 12 minutes. And the service area up there is about 7 square miles. So roughly, we're looking at 12 minutes up, 12 minutes back, 3 minutes to board, 3 minutes to alight. That doesn't take into account the time it's going to get into the neighborhood for the virtual stop. So we're at 30 minutes plus using the 30-minute option. It means the vehicle's pretty much going back and forth all day long, which isn't efficient, but it can be done. The 60-minute option actually provides more flexibility and requires fewer vehicles, and we would use a larger vehicle for this service. We're already adding a larger vehicle to the central area due to increased demand. So we also believe that there is a need to keep a vehicle in Estrella during the day for trips within the community, because while we were up there, we saw some kids that were coming home from school and they were walking through gravel, a lot of undeveloped areas up there. Plus the presence of the high school and the supermarket suggests keeping a vehicle up there would probably be a desirable opportunity. So let's take a closer look at the central area now, which is just north of our current zone. And we do have a challenge in this area as well because we have several gated communities. The villages at Rio Paseo, the cottages in the fairways, Madera and Palmilla, the vistas at Palm Valley and Villaggio. Gated communities present a challenge for on-time performance, and we run into that with Pebble Creek and these other areas. So in order to service this area, we would need to determine whether we pick up folks outside the gate or seek permission from the HOA to go inside the community. But even then, we're dealing with longer trip times because of that delay going in and out of the gate. It can be done, but we need to do a little more outreach because there may not be as much need in these areas. We do have some pockets in this area, though, where folks have already reached out to me to see if we are expanding. I've heard from the administrators at Millennium High School, a few folks in West Goodyear, west of Cotton Lane, which is that box on the left, and then 2 of the multifamily complexes near the Great Hearts Academy. So on the November 13th consent agenda, I'll be requesting approval for the 2nd year of WeRide service, which will actually be shorter than a year. The 2nd year will only be 7 months of service because we want to align the contract to our fiscal year. It also adds an additional vehicle because our spare vehicle is now in full-time service, and we are expecting higher demand because we're going to change our service hours. We're currently operating 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We're going to open that up to 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. to get more folks that need to get to work, and hopefully to our express bus at the Park and Ride. And then 8 p.m. gives people a little bit of a buffer, so maybe they go out to dinner and have a cocktail or enjoy happy hour and use WeRide to get home. This will also be the last year that we can use federal funding for operating service. We will be able to use it for our second year, that 7-month piece, but we will only be able to use it for capital costs, which is the vehicle, from year 3 to years 5. Mayor, this is my last slide, and I want to thank all of you for your trust in this pilot program. Of course, we're very, very delighted with the results, and I'm happy to take any questions.
With that, go ahead, Brandon.
I have a quick question. So are you, I know you're not asking because we can't make a decision at this point, but are you saying you're looking at expanding
No,
those areas?
so-
Or you just did the study and you're just presenting that data to us tonight? But you are expanding the hours Monday through Friday?
Yes, and
Okay.
I just want to bring this up because it's so fresh in my mind. In the strategic plan that we just discussed on Thursday, we have a project in there that's to evaluate service and funding of transit as a whole. So that is one of our follow-ups. So there is no asking for, direction or anything tonight because one of our projects is to evaluate transit as a whole.
No, I appreciate the 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. I was talking to someone that I was riding the re-ride, and every time I ride the re-ride, I talk to whoever's in there about how they like it, where they're coming from, where they're going, and what we can do better.
Right.
So, and one of them was she uses it to get to work, her and her mom, and they go to, I think, the Macy's and work there, and they really would like the expanded hours so they can use their full shift. And they'd also really like Saturdays too, but I know that's something that, I'm not sure how big that population is, that'll be another study or what that looks like, but I use it, and I think people are finding more about it, so that's why the ridership's up. And I was thinking before we had the presentation, I was thinking I need to go down to the airport. I don't know if you ever talked to all the students who are now new to the area.
Sure.
I don't know if they're aware that they have access to this.
Okay.
Because some of them they're all from different places around the country. I don't know if they have vehicles to begin with.
So if I may, thank you for the question, and
No.
thank you for the clarification, Winnett. Second year that I referred to, the 7 months of service, is actually for the existing zone.
Yeah, and the airport's in
Okay.
the existing zone. I just don't know if the students,
Right.
the 500 and 400 plus students there know.
No, what's
about
really
this.
terrific is actually, we had started the service out of Avondale's Public Works facility, but they outgrew it very, very quickly, so they had to move, and they are currently in the flight building at the airport.
Oh,
So the vehicles are there. We've also had outreach from a large solar manufacturing company, and the name is escaping me right now, right across the street from the flight complex. They're actually bringing a whole bunch of engineers in to Goodyear to start ramping up their production. And we took a meeting with them, Avondale and myself, because all of these folks are going to be staying in Goodyear hotels, a couple in Avondale as well, and they wanted to see what kind of transportation we could offer. So the great news is WeRide is going to be excellent opportunity for those folks, but then we also coordinated with Valley Metro for their van pool service. And
Yeah.
that speaks to the new initiative now where, transit is more than just this one thing. It's growing, and it's becoming something very innovative. So we are now able to provide not just that trip service for our folks that need help during the day, but that first mile and last mile service where maybe they're getting off a bus and they can take WeRide to get to the front door of that building. So that's one of the great innovations that could come out of this. But of course, this needs to be considered along with every other priority that the council is going to be considering going forward. So it's year 3 of the service that will be submitted as a budget supplemental for your consideration. Year 2 is actually going to start very, very soon. And again, it's just going to be 7 months because we need to keep going. And we do want to help these folks with that early morning and that late evening opportunities.
yeah. No, I think it's obviously a great program. I use it, and I've tried to use it more here and there. I have my little electric scooter, so I can get the last
Excellent.
mile to do like
So you're doing
two different
micro-mobility.
modes of transportation going on. And
The mini Harley.
so,
The mini Harley.
my mini Harley.
Yes.
my junior
Yeah.
mayor mobile. Yeah. So, but no, I appreciate it. So thank
Great.
you for this. And yeah, I think it's obviously the data speaks for itself. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Campbell?
Can you tell me how many surveys you actually sent to Pebble Creek?
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. The surveys were sent through the Good Neighbor post, and then also through what's the neighborhood? Nextdoor. Thank you, the Nextdoor app. They were sent through those two
So
portals.
it wasn't a mail, that's why a lot of us never saw the survey, we didn't, and we never saw it, and we wouldn't have seen it if it's not mailed to us. We don't go on Nextdoor.
Okay.
A few of us do, but that's because I'm monitoring what's going on in the other neighborhoods. And so I'm surprised because people are still complaining to me that they need rides, that they have macular degeneration. They can't get rides, or when they call for whoever they call, it takes hours for them to come and pick them up, and then they drop them off at a doctor's office. It takes them hours to come back and pick them up. So it's not a good thing. But can you explain to me how in the world can Avondale open up We Ride to all of Avondale, and we're just talking about opening up, getting another car and going another hour?
Sure, I understand. Thank you, Councilmember Campbell. In 2008, Avondale actually put forth to their voters Proposition 406, and that passed, and that asked voters if they would approve taking their half-cent sales tax for their CIP and adding transit to it. So they have a dedicated sales tax that supports their transit service, and that's why they're able to move forward a little bit more with their transit service. Their demographic really is very desirable for transit. The folks that live in those communities, and particularly the expansion area that they just started, which is south of I-10, really, yes, Cashin and some of those other neighborhoods, it really does require that service. And really what they did was just swap the Zoom. The Zoom was not operating well. It was, the contractor was not in good standing with Valley Metro, so this was an opportunity for Avondale to just say, let's eliminate this because it's costing us just as much. Let's put We Ride down there, and they really got off to an excellent start. Their ridership just went sky high immediately.
So can you estimate what it would cost our city to do something like that?
It would depend on some of these other, we'd have to do a little more outreach to get a little
Okay,
bit closer to that
that's
dollar
what I
amount.
expected. Yeah, okay, so now my next question is, if we're going to do, if you were going to do Pebble Creek, it's over at some places where some of the units are located, it's over 2 miles of a walk to the gate. That's too far for them to walk, number one. Number two, we're not allowed to have benches anywhere on any of the roads, so when people are walking, they're actually walking for health, but there's
Right.
people who can barely walk, they don't walk because there's no place to sit. So it really, if you're going to talk about expanding any of the service, you've got to take in consideration how these master plans are laid out. They're not all the same, and it's something that everybody talks about. That we have very poor transportation in Goodyear. We can't go anywhere, and we can't do anything, and if we don't drive ourselves, we don't go. Or you rely on your neighbors. And we do have an organization, but we drive them to doctor appointments. But we have so many, we
Care
don't
Bears.
have enough people to do it.
Right.
Because there's just way too many, and they're going to Sun City, they're going to Mayo, and they're going to Scottsdale, and all of that. But I really would like very much for us to consider, if we're going to expand it, let's expand it where we need it the most. I do understand we need it for Estrella, and I get it. Kids walk in the dirt, and, I know how it's hard to get, but we mainly need to move people to the employment centers, from where they live to the employment centers if they don't have a car. And that should be our target, to provide that, because we don't have any bus service.
Thank you, Councilmember Campbell. Just so you know, when I first started here, one of the ladies at the Care Bears actually reached out to me, and I learned a little bit about their organization, and I was so impressed, and I was fascinated by the fact that they're still running, and they've totally broadened their service base, and they provide so many other services now to the community. but I talked to Tracy Baker at the
Oh, she's
Robeson-
our activities
Yeah,
director.
she's
Yeah.
fantastic. I had a great conversation with her. She said that she felt like there are limited, absolutely, as you said, there are definitely limited mobility issues. However, she did say that because of the layout of the community, that there are opportunities to try to get closer to those residences. Again, along with Estrella Mountain Ranch, it's just going to require a little more work on our end. It's going to take a little more time to figure out how we would do that. Because again, what we're doing right now in the central area, those are much shorter trips. They're pretty fast hops, and we always provide an estimate on pickup time, estimate on arrival time. So that's the reason why it's going to require a little more in-depth look to be able to figure out what we can offer to that community that we can really stand behind. We don't want to make a false promise. So I appreciate your comments, and yes, we're definitely taking into account all of those needs within that community.
Well, we've been talking about providing transportation for seniors who need it for the 12 years I've been on council, and this does part of it, but it doesn't do enough.
Understood.
So we can't just say this is it and we're patting
Right.
ourselves on the back, because
Right.
we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of residents to help, and they're all over. We're not just in one area.
Yes,
So
I
I'll
understood.
be anxious to hear your presentation. Will it be in September, you said?
No, it's part of our strategic plan, so we'll evaluate transit as a whole.
Oh,
right?
not till then?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
and-
Okay, thank
And
you.
it's in the strategic plan for fiscal year '26 to be, the evaluation to be completed by,
Okay,
yes.
okay, thank you, very good.
Vice Mayor?
I just want to make a brief comment to say I love We Ride. I think it's one of the most innovative things that we've done. It's been wildly successful. And just look forward to your continued study and community engagement on this. I think we earned a great award here.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Councilmember Laura Connor?
Thank you. First of all, congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
It is well-deserved. It is a great program. It's innovative. It helps get people where they need to be. I like the plan that you're kind of fleshing out. I know it's not online yet for Estrella. I think basically almost like working like a shuttle back and forth, and then
That's
they
what
can-
it looks like.
Like
yeah.
kind of a hub and spoke.
Yes.
Other places from there is a good way to help get those people to doctor's appointments and the recreation down there. So I think that's a great idea. When we look at our transportation study, Waymo, is there any chance we look at them as well to add them as a component? I know they're all over the East Valley, you know, yeah.
Waymo is available through Valley Metro now. I can,
Oh,
A
I
big
can-
butt. No. Yeah.
oh.
okay,
Because I heard it's cheaper than, because my daughter took a couple, it's cheaper than Uber. They pick you up, there's no driver, but, so you save money, but.
I'd be more than happy to get some additional information on how that would work and provide it through the city manager's office as part of the strategic planning to see if maybe we can use it in some areas. One of the things I learned from the survey, again, as small as the survey result was, we sure have a lot of people that would love a ride to the airport.
Oh, yeah, Estrella, you can't get
And
off there.
it's Estrella, it's Pebble Creek, it's everywhere. And I'm sure that that's also true in Buckeye. And to some degree, let me back up a little bit. So I don't know if I'm taking Councilmember Stipp's thunder here, but Valley Metro is about to put out a new West Valley contract, and part of that has microtransit as a service. So Valley Metro is looking to maybe move a little more aggressively into the West Valley, yay. And they might be that option to bring a Waymo-type service just to test. I did go in a May Mobility vehicle in Sun City for a test drive, and Councilmember Stipp and I, a couple of years ago, went on the Waymo vehicle as well. They are limited in terms of their speed limit. So FHWA will only let any of these companies go up to a certain speed, and that's it. And that limits where you can use them. So that's part of the reason why they're not necessarily out here. But I can tell you they're very interested in being out here. It's just a matter of how fast can they go because of the speed limits that are already in place.
Well, I love what we started with, and we can just keep building on it, you know, because that first presentation shows you that people are going to still coming out here, so thank you very
Yeah,
much.
sure did. Thank you.
Councilmember Stipp?
think we have to say, I love We Wide.
Say that again, please?
It's an Elmer, I
Yeah, I know.
love We Wide, I love We Wide. So I'll go backward from where we had. Waymo, when they first got started, the challenge that they have, particularly in the West Valley, is they haven't geo-mapped where those vehicles can be. They did all of their concentration in the East Valley, and then they moved that concentration into Central Phoenix. So there's a lot of movement in that Southeast Valley area because that's what they have mapped. We are large geographically on the west side, and to Christine's point about the speeds and whatnot, and it's the actual posted speed, not the literal speeds that are being done. So that's another issue here. But when it comes to a lot of this issue for us, it really does come down to funding transit. And most of the communities in Valley Metro that have very active public transit have their own dedicated funding source. We do not. So if you look at the list of the 19 Valley cities that participate on Valley Metro Board, the vast majority of them do not have funding sources, and the vast majority of them do not have anything funded outside of the regional tax, which is Proposition 400. Now, having said that, if Proposition 400 doesn't pass, even what we have goes away, which in and of itself is problematic. So I think we have to look kind of internally, how do we decide to fund our transit needs, which I think is the strategic planning initiative.
Would we still have the lottery money? And that has to be spent on transit, doesn't it?
We are using the lottery money. We actually use it for maintenance at the Park and Ride, and it also will be helping us with Ride Choice and Dial a Ride.
That's how we'll offset.
I would
it's
think
a
the
fixed-
lottery money would be bigger after those big billion-dollar,
I would have loved that, but unfortunately, no. We are at about $230,000 a year, and that does not go very far.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't play.
Now, when $230,000 a year doesn't go very far, I mean, what is that saying? So I think we have to be honest with ourselves about how we're doing that. Christine, I know you may not know off the top of your head, but what is the cost if I'm a We Ride passenger? What does it cost me?
Okay, so a general passenger is $2. A senior, disabled, veteran, or student is $1.
Okay. What does the actual ride generally cost? Just get close.
About anywhere from $35 to $40 per ride.
So we're significantly subsidizing
Yes, you
each
are.
one of those rides. So if we do 100 rides a day and let's just keep the math simple, it's $30 a ride.
Yeah, so I also just want to clarify for anybody listening, the first year, the pilot program was funded by $500,000 of Federal Transit Administration funding, and the other $500,000 was from the revenue from the electronic billboard at the Park and Ride.
That we'd been stockpiling.
Correct.
Right.
So year two, that 7-month period, there is enough money in both of those sources remaining to fund the 7 months. And that's why I'm not asking you for money I'm just asking for your authorization on the 14th. So we're good for year one, we're good for year two. When we move to year three, whatever you decide, we will need to look at general fund.
So, right, so that's kind of where I'm driving. So this budget supplemental for year three, 100 rides a day, $30 a ride, $3,000. Is that correct? So
Okay.
it's late.
Yeah, really.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But if you say is it 3,000? Look, somebody's smart. Where's Doug when you need him?
We don't do math.
Yeah. Yeah, it's $3,000 a day. So $3,000 a day times, well, it's not, we don't run it every 30 days, so we run,
5 days a week.
5 days a week and,
I'm going to disappoint.
365 days. You look at the math, just saying that out loud, it's expensive. So every time we decide, hey, we should run it to Estrella, well, that $30 ride now is $60 or $50, or if we're gonna expand it to wherever. So, yeah, it's almost $1 million a year just to run this one service. So, thank you, Sherry.
But isn't it great, though, Councilmember, that we're keeping residents in Goodyear and
Absolutely.
their daytime traffic? And
No, I am not complaining from a financial
can't help,
perspective.
I have to say
in
that.
Any way, shape, or form. But for us, we have to realize this is an expensive endeavor. And we, as much as we want to expand it to everybody, and I think about Avondale is, I think it's 53 or 55 square miles in Avondale proper. It's very tightly compacted, where us from, north of Camelback, all the way down to Cantamia, it's like 120 square miles so we can't expand it to the entire city just based on that alone. So I think we've got to, and I said this when we kicked this thing off, the real challenge with this whole thing is it's going to be successful and it's going to fall in the manager's lap. Now, it's a different manager, but she's still going to have to deal with how to come up with funding this. So, Christine, obviously, great job as usual. It's a great service. If I hear anything positive from people, not that I only hear complaints, but the positive things that you hear, We Ride, Rec Center, I mean, it's not even close. So thanks for the presentation.
thank you.
Councilmember Gillis? You good?
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate everything that you've done. You know, I said in the beginning, I loved this whole concept. And I just think it's great what you've done. And I think it's great that we're helping so many people across the valley, because there's a lot of people that do need that. As Wally was saying, we know there's a lot of people, especially elderly out there, that need the help. And I think it's good that we offer it. So,
Thank you.
Again, thank you, well-deserved reward. Sure would be nice to have that $5 million the state took away from us, right? Sorry, Jenna, I couldn't resist, you know what I mean,
Fight
since
goes
we're
on.
talking money here. But with that, that's it? No, you got something?
are we done?
We're done with this one here.
I loved watching you get your award. We were all there, and you were fabulous, and we were so excited at the Goodyear table when you went up there to receive it. You were great.
Thank you.
You good? All right. With no further business to discuss, meeting's adjourned.
Was just, if you like animals, honestly, and you like to see how these dogs are trained, it is amazing. And a couple of us went down and saw it, and we had a lot of good people down there. Marcus and Mike led the whole division, basically. They were taking care of everything. I don't know how they did it, because I'm sure they were exhausted. But Zach Ravitch and Shane Seymour actually placed. I was so excited. So anyway, I wanted to say our officers are really doing their thing, and these dogs are amazing, because I know they cost a lot of money.
Did you pet the dog?
The dogs and the handler placed. So I just wanted to say that. Congratulations to them.